I sat up straight in bed and looked at the clock on the bedside table. It was 2:30 in the morning. The t-shirt I was wearing in bed was wet, as it always was when I had this dream. I looked at my wife. She was sound asleep. I was glad I hadn't woken her up. I must not have been delirious in my sleep this time. I didn't know what caused this dream, but it was always the same. It was a dream-fogged version of a memory of an event that happened over 2 years ago. In the dream, I was sitting at a desk in my office. On the desk in front of me was a half-full bottle of scotch, an empty glass, and a .38 caliber revolver. I poured myself a full glass of scotch and drank it in one big gulp. In my dreams, I always noted that I could not taste or feel the effects of the scotch. I would then take the gun and open the cylinder to make sure there were live rounds in all 6 chambers. Then I'd say, "Full of goddamn ammo, none. I want to damn well destroy them. If I do that, I'll go to jail. No, I'll damn well destroy myself. Damn them." The words didn't always match, but the idea was there. Thank God the dreams became much less frequent. At first I had them every week, and sometimes twice a week, but now it was less than once every 2 months. In the dream, everything seemed so real, like it was actually happening, but in reality, the dream had very little to do with the actual event. There was a bottle of scotch, but I was lying on the couch in the living room. There was no .38 caliber revolver. I don't own a gun. Threats to destroy, I don't remember uttering that night. I got drunk, very drunk, and fell asleep on the couch. To make sense of all this, I'll have to go back 2 years to start the story. 2002 was a bad year. The problem started in January when my wife Kathy and I got into a dispute with the city inspectors over the design of a new house we were planning to build. The inspector repeatedly rejected our application for a building permit until I finally got the engineer to sign off on our drawings, saying that what we wanted to do was safe and met all current building codes. When we finally got the permit, the struggle with the contractor to keep on schedule began and continued until we were able to move into the house in August. In addition to the challenges of building the house, Kathy and I have been very busy with our careers. My name is Fred Alpin, and on March 6, 2002, Kathy and I celebrated our 6th wedding anniversary. If it weren't for the problems with the house construction, things were going very well. For my part, I had already been working for the Independent Investigations Corporation, IIC, in Indianapolis for 8 years. IIC is no ordinary private detective agency. We provide investigative services to large insurance companies. Our job was to investigate insurance claims for fraud, recover stolen property, or mitigate our clients' losses in some way. For our services, we were paid a percentage of the value of the items recovered or what we saved the insurance companies. I am a lead investigator, which allows me to choose the cases I want to work on and assign them to others. I can tell you from my own experience that this business is quite lucrative. I was 30 years old and was just beginning to find gray hairs in my thick mop of dark brown hair. I've been called confident. I am confident, whatever that means. I'm not a handsome movie star or a freak from a freak show. My facial features are pretty average, except my nose is a little crooked. It was broken in an amateur boxing match when I was in college, and I have very dark brown eyes. At 6 feet 2 inches tall and 185 pounds, I have an athletic build. I always stand up straight, and my facial expression rarely gives away what I'm thinking. Kathy was 29 years old, and at 5 feet 8 inches tall, she was the most beautiful woman I knew. Her dark brown hair with flecks of red in it hung down to her shoulders in long curls. Her eyes were blue with tiny flecks of green in the iris. Kathy had been the head of DC&H's accounting department for 2 years now, with 20 accountants reporting to her. DC&H specialized in mergers and acquisitions and had been doing well the last couple of years, so Kathy had gotten some nice year-end bonuses, but in early 2002, DC&H's Indianapolis office started having problems. In February, the manager of the Indianapolis office was fired and Greg Bartlett took his place. Greg was about 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighed at least 20 pounds, and was nearly bald. The hair that was still left formed a horseshoe around his head. Kathy said Bartlett was a good manager, and upon meeting him, I liked him. At the same time Bartlett arrived in Indianapolis, DC&H moved one of its vice presidents into the office. According to Kathy, the company decided it would be a good idea to spread the vice presidents around to different cities so they could visit clients and help close big deals. The vice president's name was Jack Hansen, and he had moved to Indianapolis from New York City. Hansen was about 45 years old, 5 feet tall, with graying hair. He was in good physical shape and obviously exercised regularly. When I met him, he was friendly but seemed to be a man with a wandering eye. I noticed him looking at women walking by as if contemplating whether to sleep with them. He was married, but I didn't doubt that it was slowing him down somehow. I'd met a lot of men like him, and I didn't like them either. Kathy thought he was wonderful, and according to her, so did everyone else at DC and H. She talked about him constantly, telling me about all his great ideas for new business development, which ultimately meant more money for her. By summer, construction on our new home was on schedule, and the turmoil caused by the change in management at DC and H had settled down. According to Kathy, thanks to Mr. Hansen, things were looking up. We moved into our new home near Indianapolis the second week of August, and we loved it. The day we moved in, I jokingly told Kathy that I wanted to make love to her at least once in every room of the house. Kathy looked around at all the boxes waiting to be unpacked, and then took my hand and led me into the kitchen. "Let's do the kitchen right now," Kathy said. We set to work. When we left the room, Kathy turned to me. "We'll do the bedroom today and the living room tomorrow. Now get back to work." That evening, we did the bedroom but didn't get to the other rooms. Between our work and trying to set up the new house, we didn't have much time or energy, but we stayed connected, so to speak, in our bedroom. It seemed like the only time we could be together was when we went to bed at night. One evening, I brought up the subject of starting a family. We had discussed it before, and Kathy said she wanted to start in the fall so we could have a baby by summer. "I think it's time for you to stop taking birth control pills and we'll get pregnant," I said. "I think we should wait a little longer," she said. "Jack suggested I wait until next year. He said I'm in line for a promotion and it could happen by the end of the year. I want to wait until I'm promoted." "Jack?" "Yes, Jack Hansen." "Since when did you start calling vice presidents of corporations by their first names?" I asked. "Things are pretty informal in our office," she replied. "Why do you want to discuss our plans to start a family with him?" I was a little annoyed that she was discussing our personal affairs with this guy. He asked me if we were planning to have kids, and I told him we were planning to have them this fall. Then he suggested I wait until next year. I wasn't happy about that, but I agreed to wait until January. By the end of the year, Katie and I were both working a lot and not spending enough time together. We tried to make our weekends special, and it helped, but work began to intrude even on our weekends. DC and H was trying to win a contract for a major merger, and Kathy's accounting department was busy with that work. As for me, I had 3 investigations to complete before the end of the year. On the last weekend in November, Kathy and I managed to take the last weekend off at the same time, and we went Christmas shopping. That evening over dinner, Kathy gave me the good news. "It looks like we will have an agreement with National Pharmaceutical to merge with Keystone Pharmaceutical by December 20th, she said. "That means I'll get a promotion this year." "Really? That's terrific. Then we can start working on getting you pregnant. Why don't we start tonight?" "I can't start tonight. I'm still on the pill. Besides, I want to wait a few more months to settle into my new job before I go on maternity leave," she said. "And don't you dare tell anyone I told you this. I could get in a lot of trouble if it got out, and it would probably ruin the deal with National." I was disappointed that Kathy wanted to put off starting a family again, but I understood her reason. "You know I won't tell anyone," I said. "Maybe I should run out and buy some National Pharmaceutical stock on Monday." "Hell no," she said. "That's insider trading. If you do that, we'll all go to jail." I was just kidding. "I know we can't do anything like that. You can count on my discretion," I said. "I know," she said. "I'm just nervous about it. We're so close, and I don't want anything to go wrong." December is Christmas party time, and our companies are no exception. The party at IIC was held on Friday, December 6th. The party was quite modest. 43 people attended, including employees, spouses, and significant others. Dinner was followed by drinks and appetizers. After dinner, there were more drinks, music, and dancing. I think the main reason our party wasn't as raucous is that most of the IIC staff are researchers, so we spend most of our time in the field. The staff don't socialize with each other as much, so we don't know each other as well. I have one close friend at IIC. His name is Bill Ripley, and we have worked on several cases together over the years. As for the rest of the team, I know who they are, but I can't tell you what their spouses' names are or how many children they have. We are just not a cohesive group, unlike Kathy's team at DC and H. Kathy and I sat with Bill and his wife, Susan, and had a good time even though there was a low-key party going on around us. We partied until midnight and then headed home. When we entered the house, I led Kathy to our bedroom. Moving together, we discussed our plans for a family. We agreed that we wanted 2 children and that they should be 2 years apart. Katie said she would stop taking birth control pills in February, which would hopefully allow us to conceive next November. Katie said that if she got a promotion, a November birth would suit her just fine. I wasn't happy about having to wait that long, but then I wasn't the one who had to go through the pregnancy. That Saturday, things started to take a turn for the worse. I had to leave for the office for the afternoon, and when I got home, Katie was sitting in the family room looking out the window. She didn't look at me when I walked in, and when I spoke to her, she jumped up like she didn't even realize I was here. It was obvious that she was thinking about something, and it was bothering her a lot. I wanted to ask her about it, but I gave her time and let her decide when she was ready to talk to me. I waited until after dinner to demand an explanation for her depressed mood. Early in our marriage, Kathy and I had made a deal. Whoever cooked could rest after the meal while the other did the dishes and cleaned the kitchen. That night, Kathy cooked dinner, and I loaded the dishwasher and cleaned the kitchen. I think we both preferred cooking to cleaning. At least I know that for a fact. After finishing up in the kitchen, I joined Kathy in the family room. Kathy and I had always been open with each other and communicated well, so I waited for her to tell me what was on her mind. When it became clear that she wasn't going to talk about it, I started the conversation. "Katie, what's going on?" "Obviously, something is bothering you," I said. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Kathy looked at me with sad eyes. "There was a problem with the deal with National Pharmaceutical," she said. "It turns out that the president of National Pharmaceutical, Mr. Benson, is making unrealistic demands, and if we don't give him what he wants, it could cost us the deal. If we don't get this contract, it will ruin everything." "It won't ruin everything. No matter what happens, we have each other. Don't worry so much." "What's the worst that could happen?" I asked. "You don't understand," she said. "If the deal falls through, it will be because of me. If that happens, I could lose my job." "How can it be your fault if the deal falls through?" I asked. "You're not in sales." "I can't tell you anything more than that. I can't talk to anyone outside of DC and H about it. The only thing I can say is that I haven't done anything wrong." "I don't understand," I said. "If you didn't do anything wrong, how can it be your fault?" "I told you I can't talk about this with you," she said. "I could lose my job for telling you as much as I already have. You're going to have to let me deal with it myself." I wanted to say something else, but I realized from the look on her face that the conversation was over. On Sunday, I had hoped Katie would be in a better mood, but she seemed to be even more depressed. She wouldn't even look at me, and a conversation of more than 3 or 4 words just couldn't happen. Monday morning, I got up early and made breakfast, but Kathy wouldn't eat anything. She drank her coffee and went to take a shower. I busied myself with shoveling the snow that had fallen overnight from the driveway. When I got back to the house, Kathy was already getting ready for work. "It's only 6:30. Why are you leaving so early?" I asked. "I have some important meetings to get ready for," she replied. Kathy kissed me briefly as she passed me on her way to the garage. Monday morning was trash day in our neighborhood, so I needed to empty all the baskets and take the trash to the curb. I carried the baskets from the second floor to the kitchen to empty them into a trash bag. As I was dumping the bathroom basket into the trash bag, something fell out of it and disappeared from sight. I tried for a few minutes to find the item and gave up. I took the trash out, put it in a large plastic container, and rolled it outside. Back in the house, I looked around the kitchen one more time trying to find the object that had fallen out of the trash can. Finding nothing, I headed for the shower and began to get ready for work. Kathy's depression didn't seem to have changed, so Monday night I tried to broach the subject again. "Has it gotten better at work?" I asked. "You know I can't talk to you about that," she replied. "I'm under a lot of pressure, but I'll get through it." On Wednesday, Kathy began to come out of her depression. When I walked into the house that evening, she greeted me with a kiss and professed her love, something she hadn't done since Friday night. I could see that she hadn't quite recovered yet. The smile was gone, but neither was that detached look, and she didn't look so preoccupied anymore. Can you talk about what's going on now, or are those conversations still out of my reach? I asked. I shouldn't be talking to you about this, but we seem to have found a way to make Mr. Benson happy, she said. Jack said it looks like it should work out. Did you hear the relief or determination in her voice? She wasn't smiling when she told me this, so I knew she was still under a lot of stress, but hopefully it would be over soon. I don't know why, but it always annoyed me when Katie called Hanson by his first name. She told me it was because their office was informal, but she always addressed Greg Bartlett as Mr. Bartlett. And Greg was the office manager, and Hanson was the vice president. I guess I just didn't realize it. That night in bed, Kathy wanted me to hold her, but she didn't want to make love. I began to feel the strain of the problems Kathy was facing. I cuddled Kathy until she fell asleep, and then I rolled over to my side of the bed and tried to fall asleep, but I couldn't. After 20 minutes of tossing and turning in bed, I got up and went down to the kitchen to get a drink. I stood at the island counter in our kitchen, drinking water and going through the mail for the second time that day. When nothing caught my eye, I noticed Katie's briefcase standing on a chair in front of the counter. I had never invaded Kathy's privacy before, but that evening, for some reason, I decided to look in her briefcase. Kathy hadn't closed the briefcase, so I set it on the counter and opened it. Inside were a lot of papers that didn't give me any answers. I pulled out Kathy's day planner and opened it. I looked through her calendars and notes. On Monday, Kathy had 2 meetings with Mr. Bartlett. The second meeting was also attended by Mr. Hanson. On Tuesday, she had another meeting with Hanson, and on Wednesday, she met with Hanson and Mr. Benson, the president of National Pharmaceutical. I was beginning to understand why Kathy was under a lot of pressure, but I didn't understand why she would want to meet with a client. She worked in accounting. She had never been on the negotiating team for previous deals. I wondered if this meant that Kathy was going to move from accounting to sales when she got a promotion. Kathy's day planner had several more meetings scheduled with Bartlett and another meeting with Hanson for the morning of December 20th. Also on the 20th, Kathy wrote 10 p.m. followed by a question mark. The only thing I found unusual in her day planner was the month-at-a-glance calendar for December. It had a few notations on it that didn't make sense to me. On December 6th, Kathy wrote beginning. Then each subsequent day was numbered from 1 to 14. The 14th day fell on Friday, December 20th. That date was circled and underlined. I wondered if it had something to do with a meeting with Hanson scheduled for that day, or the fact that DC&H was having a Christmas party on that day. Perhaps the date was circled because that was the day they hoped to get Mr. Benson to sign the contract. I was still puzzled as to why she had numbered the days from December 6th through December 20th from 1 to 14. I knew I would have to ponder this question for a long time to come. I put Kathy's day planner back in my briefcase and closed it. When I returned to bed, the briefcase was lying on the chair where I had found it. Over the next few days, Kathy's mood continued to improve, but she remained a bit aloof around me. In my 8 years as an investigator, I had learned a lot about how to get answers to questions without resorting to interrogation. Putting together everything Kathy had told me, I was able to determine that the 20th seemed to be the critical date. If Mr. Benson was going to sign a contract with DC&H, it had to happen on that date. On Friday, December 13th, I was able to close one of the 3 cases I was working on, and I was close to closing another. That evening, I stopped by after work for a beer with Bill Ripley to celebrate the closing. We had a couple beers each, talked about the case, and then I decided to talk to Bill about what I had found in Kathy's day planner without telling him whose day planner it was. I told him it was a case I was working on and told him about the days, which were numbered 1 through 14, with the 20th one circled and underlined. Bill looked at me and said, "Sorry, buddy, but I can't help you. It doesn't remind me of anything." "You said the planner belonged to a woman, right?" "Yes." "Then I suggest you talk to Mary Farrell," Bill said. "You may need a woman's perspective to get to the bottom of this case." Bill was right. A woman's perspective was just what I needed. Mary Farrell was one of the best investigators at IIC and one of only 3 women in the company. I dropped the subject lest Bill think I was obsessed with the case and start wondering why. We had a couple more beers and just talked. During the course of the conversation, I told Bill about my dream of someday opening my own detective agency. "If you ever open one, let me know," Bill said. "I'll come to work for you, but you'll have to pay me more than the MSC." Bill laughed when he said that. "Pay you more? Hell, you get paid too much already," I said. I'm serious, Bill said. If you ever decide to go out on your own, talk to me. That may never happen, I said. But if I ever open my own agency, you'll be the first person I turn to. We chatted some more and then I headed home. It had been another disappointing weekend. Kathy was attentive and affectionate with me, but somehow we managed to have a weekend without sex. Katie and I hadn't made love in over a week, and it was starting to bother me. Not just because I was cut off from her, but because I didn't understand why. Monday morning, I told Kathy that I would probably have to work late every night to try to finish the 2 cases I was working on. You can't work late on Friday, she said. You have to be home in time to get ready for the party. What time do we have to be there? I asked. The party starts at 8 o'clock. I want to be there no later than 8:30, Katie replied. So you need to be home by 7 o'clock to get ready. Okay, I'll be home by 7. I was frustrated, and by the middle of the week, I was starting to get angry with Kathy. I closed my second case on Tuesday and took Kathy out to dinner to celebrate. But afterward, she told me she wasn't feeling well and we didn't talk again. And on Wednesday night, she put me off again. It took all my patience not to explode at her. I knew she was having a hard time at work, but there was a limit to how long I was willing to wait. I managed to convince myself that everything would be resolved after Friday. Katie would find out about the deal with National Pharmaceutical, and she also needed to know if she was going to get a promotion. So I was willing to be patient, at least until Friday. By Thursday, I had pretty much closed my last case. I had one chance to solve the case quickly on Friday morning, but if that didn't work, it would take the rest of the day. The problem was that if I didn't take a break in the morning, it would be very difficult for me to get everything done and get home by 7 o'clock, as I had promised Kathy I would. That night at dinner, I told Kathy that it would be hard for me to get home by 7, and she started to get angry. You promised, she said. I know, I said, and I'm sorry, but I'm so close to finishing this tomorrow. I could see her anger building. Katie, you don't have to wait for me. If I don't show up on time, leave without me, I said. I'll be there as soon as I can. I have to be there by 9 o'clock. I don't want to go without you, she said. I think 9 o'clock will be just about right. I just can't be later than that time. I'll try to be home by 7:30. If I can't make it, I'll meet you at the party. Kathy didn't say anything else on the subject. Friday morning, I had a break in the case. I was assigned to recover some stolen jewelry after a home invasion. The merchandise was insured for over $1 million. The perpetrator contacted the insurance company and offered to sell the stolen jewelry for $250,000, saving the insurance company $750,000. The insurance company agreed to pay $250,000 and asked the IIC to handle the transaction. It took me a while to gain the confidence of the criminal and arrange a meeting to hand over the money for the jewelry. After I arranged the meeting, I had to drive to the insurance company's office to receive the exchange money. The paperwork involved in receiving such an amount of money takes a lot of time. Fortunately, I was able to figure out the thief and followed him to the coffee shop on Friday morning. I then called his cell phone to arrange a meeting in the afternoon to make the exchange. After the call, I followed him to an old parking lot on the west side of town. From across the street, I watched him go into the garage and open the trunk of the old car. He didn't take anything out of the car. He just closed the trunk and walked away. Before he left the garage, he looked around to see if anyone was following him, but he didn't see me. As soon as he left, I ran across the street to the garage. The door was locked with a small padlock that didn't fit my tire iron. 5 minutes later, I opened the trunk of the old car and found a small canvas bag inside. In the bag, I found all the jewelry I had stolen. As I left, I closed the garage door and taped a note to the broken lock. Better luck next time. Back at the office, I contacted the insurance company, informed them that I had the stolen jewelry, and arranged for someone to come get it. I was very pleased with myself. I had managed to prevent the thief from profiting from my crime. I had saved the insurance company a lot of money and earned a nice fee from my company. Most importantly, the victims got their jewelry back. Not a bad day's work, I thought. As I left the office, I saw Mary Farrell talking to another investigator. I waited until she finished talking and then walked over to her and invited her to have lunch with me. Mary had started working at IEC 4 years ago, and I had known her for most of that time. Nearly 6 feet tall, with short blonde hair and piercing green eyes, Mary is both attractive and intimidating, which is one of the reasons she's so good at her job. Are you buying, Fred? She asked. I'll pay you if you help me with something I'm working on, I said. Okay, you're in. Mary and I walked across the street to a small sandwich store, and I bought each of us a couple pastrami sandwiches and 2 sodas to go with them. Must not be such a big deal if that's all you're willing to spend to get information, Mary said when we found a table. I always liked Mary's sense of humor. While we ate, I told her about the markings on Kathy's month-at-a-glance calendar without giving away who I was investigating. I showed it to Bill Ripley, and he said that since it was a woman's calendar, it should be explained by a woman, I said. Does it have any significance to you? Mary was silent for a long time. She was about to finish her sandwich when she suddenly started smiling. What are you smiling about? I asked. Numbers, she replied. It took me a while, but I think I know what it's about. You said she wrote beginning on the 6th, after which the days were numbered from 1 to 14, and December 20th was the 14th, is that correct? Correct, I said, and the 20th was circled and underlined. I believe she wrote began on the 6th because that's when her last period started, and then she counted down 14 days to the day she's most likely to be most fertile, meaning today is her most fertile day, Mary said. This woman is tracking her cycle because she's trying to get pregnant. Does that make sense in your case? I was stunned, not only because Mary had guessed it so easily, but also because it had never occurred to me. I'm not sure, but in the context of this case, it might make sense, I said. Thanks for your help. I think for the little help I've given you, a pastrami sandwich is a reasonable price, Mary said. After finishing lunch, Mary and I went back to the office, and I spent the rest of the day doing paperwork and wondering why Kathy would want to track her menstrual cycle. I couldn't remember when her last period was. I had never kept track of her cycles. I was always surprised when she would tell me that the small craft warning was over when I tried to start partying during her period. Another thing that puzzled me was that Katie didn't plan to stop taking birth control pills until at least February. So why would she be tracking her cycle? Maybe she was tracking it for someone else. I began to feel the tension in my gut. I was picking up bits of information that didn't make sense to me yet, but I had a feeling I would soon have answers. One thing I have learned from my training and experience is to be patient and wait for all the facts before jumping to conclusions. If you act too quickly, the consequences can be dire. I have always been a patient person, so it was easy for me to internalize this principle. Perhaps that is why I have been so successful in this business. It would have been difficult for me, but patience was definitely required now. By 5 o'clock, I had finished my work and was ready to head home. By the time I got to my car, it was getting dark and it looked like it could start snowing at any moment. As I drove home through rush hour traffic, I felt pretty good. I ran 3 important errands, got an answer to one of my questions about Kathy's daily planner, and was getting home just in time to take Kathy to her party, which I hoped would relieve some of her stress. I arrived home around 5:30 p.m. and parked the car in the driveway. It seemed pointless to me to put it in the garage if we were going to hit the road again in a little while. I went down to the street to pick up the mail and then walked to the front door. I hadn't looked in the garage, so I didn't know if Kathy was home or not. I stepped out onto the porch and was about to unlock the door when I noticed a light on in the hallway. I peeked through the small window next to the door to see if I could see Kathy, but she wasn't there, at least not right away. I started to back up to unlock the door when I saw movement at the top of the stairs. Katie was coming down the stairs, and I was shocked to see that she was completely naked. She was carrying something in her hands, but I didn't immediately realize what it was. I backed away from the window a little because I didn't want Kathy to see her face in the window and be scared to death. When she got to the bottom step, I saw that she had a towel in one hand and a can of shaving cream in the other. This puzzled me. What was she doing with shaving cream? Stepping off the bottom step, Katie turned right, walked into the living room, and stopped next to a chair a few feet away from me. In those 2 minutes, my world changed. I watched what was happening and then rushed to my car. I opened the car door and pushed the garage door opener button. The door opened after about 15 seconds, after which I drove the car into the garage. Walking up the steps to the kitchen door, I pushed the button to close the garage door and waited for it to close before opening the kitchen door. I figured that should have given Katie sufficient warning that I was home. As I entered the kitchen, I was sure I heard a door close somewhere in the house. I walked through the kitchen into the dining room and then into the living room. Kathy was nowhere to be seen. "Katie, I'm home," I called out as I walked up the stairs. Once in our bedroom, I called out to Kathy again, and this time she answered. "You're home early. That's great. I'm in the bathroom getting ready. Why don't you use the shower in the guest bathroom?" Kathy said. "Why?" "I'm busy here," she said. "Hmm, okay." But she'd never done this before. It wasn't like her. As angry as Katie was at me, I would be very surprised if she dressed like that for me, unless it was to make me jealous. I wondered, if not me, then who? When Katie came out of the bathroom and stood in front of me, I felt my anger fading away, but I couldn't let that happen. I needed to stay strong because I still didn't know what was in store for me that night. At 7:30, I asked Katie if she was ready to go. "I'm ready," she replied. "You look really good," I said. "You're going to melt someone's heart today." Kathy turned to walk out the door and said, "Yours, I hope." I wondered if she meant to melt my heart or break it. We drove in silence for the first 15 minutes before Kathy finally spoke. "I'm sorry," Kathy said. "It just seemed like a good idea at the time," I said. "No problem," I said. "We can talk about it this weekend, but let's just try to have some fun tonight." I tried to lighten things up a bit. The party was being held at the company's office in a large auditorium on the second floor. As soon as Kathy and I walked in and checked our coats, Hanson came up to us and said hello. He then took Kathy aside. I felt my blood pressure rising and watched them carefully, trying to catch what they were talking about. Kathy nodded her head, yes, a couple times, then shook her head, no, and Hanson seemed to get frustrated and Kathy became even more animated. Their conversation seemed to end when Hanson started to walk away from Kathy, but then turned around and came back. But now he was smiling. He seemed to be offering her something, and I realized she wasn't thrilled about it, but she nodded her head in agreement, and Hanson walked away. When Katie came back to me, I asked her what he wanted. "The deal with National Pharmaceutical closes tonight. At 10 o'clock, I have to go to a meeting with Jack and Mr. Bartlett. If the meeting goes well, we'll get the contract with National." "Then you'll be promoted?" "Yes, if everything works out." Kathy didn't look as happy as she should be if she got what she wanted. "Then we can start trying for a baby?" I asked, hoping to get some sort of answer from her. "Yes, we can start our family," she said without emotion. I wanted to shake her and say, "What the hell is going on?" The problem was that I had already started to guess what was going on, and now I had to decide what to do about it. As we entered the large room where the party was being held, Katie threw her arm over mine and pressed herself against me. The room was beautifully decorated, and there were several tables around it. There was a band set up at one end of the room and an area for dancing at the other end of the room. At the other end of the room, a buffet was set up and an open bar was next to it. I looked around the room to see who was in attendance. I don't know many of the DC and H people very well, but I'm good at memorizing faces, and most of these people I'd seen many times over the past 6 years. And I had a pretty good idea of who belonged here and who didn't. And it didn't take me long to spot him. He was standing next to the bar by himself. He was about 35 years old, about 6 feet tall. His weight was 175 pounds. He was wearing a dark blue Armani double-breasted suit, and I decided he could be described as a handsome man. I pointed him out and asked Kathy, "Who is that guy standing over there by the bar?" "I don't know," she replied, but I could tell by the look on her face that she wasn't being truthful. "Why don't we go over to the bar and have a drink?" I suggested. I suggested. I suggested. "There are a few members of my department here that I'd like to say hello to. Why don't you pour us both a drink and I'll wait here for you?" she said. I walked over to the bar, ordered Katie a glass of red wine, myself a beer, and then turned to the Armani suit. "Mr. Benson, how are you today?" A look of surprise flashed across his face. "How do you know me?" he asked. "It's my job," I said. "I have to take this wine to Miss Alpin, and then I'd like to come back and talk to you if you don't mind." Mr. Benson studied me for a moment. I could tell I was worrying him, but he didn't seem to be afraid of me. For a moment I thought he knew who I was, but I didn't understand how he could have. Something else about me must have been bothering him. "Oh, okay. I'll be right there," he said. I took the drink from Katie and told her I'd walk around while she chatted with her friends. "Don't walk away from me," she said. "I need you by my side tonight." "I won't be gone for long. I don't want to sit here and listen to you talk to your friends," I said. Kathy threw me a sad look as I got up from the table, but let me go When I was satisfied that Kathy was no longer paying attention to what I was doing, I turned to Mr. Benson again. "My name is Fred. I work for DC and H Security," I said. "I just want to make sure there are no problems today. I think Mr. Hansen has a fun evening planned." "That's what he told me," he replied. "I'm just killing time until the fun starts." "I think it starts around 10 o'clock for you," I said. "You seem to know everything," Mr. Benson said nervously. "Like I said, it's my job to know everything. I have to make sure no one bothers you tonight, and then no one bothers you afterward, if you know what I mean," I said with a wink and a sly smile. "I take it you like brunettes?" "I like brunettes, especially ones with long hair," he said. "Like Miss Alpin, you mean?" "Exactly," he said, and this time his smile was cheeky. I wanted to strangle the bastard, but I couldn't do it. "I bet you're just like me," I said. "You like the ones with lots of hair on their head but none between their legs, right?" I asked, winking and smiling again. "Bald is good," he said and laughed. I'd learned everything I wanted from him, so it was time to back off before I shoved my fist down the smug bastard's throat. "I need to get going. Gotta make sure there's no one who shouldn't be here. If there's any trouble, just find me. I'll be around," I said. I muttered swear words under my breath as I walked away from him. When I got back to the other side of the hall, the orchestra was playing, and a man came up to Kathy and asked her to dance. She very politely but firmly turned him down and then grabbed my hand and dragged me to the dance floor before I could sit down. As we danced, I kept my eyes on Mr. Benson to make sure he wasn't watching us. I didn't want him to guess that I was Kathy's husband. I was still working out my plans and didn't want them to fall apart before they were even finalized. I was still trying to put the last pieces of the puzzle together, and it was already 9:30. From the nervous tension, my stomach started doing somersaults. The song ended, and I started to walk back to the table where Kathy was sitting when the band started playing a slow song. Kathy pulled me back to the dance floor and pulled me to her. Kathy always liked to dance next to me, but this time it looked like she was trying to penetrate me. She held me so tightly it was uncomfortable. At some point during the dance, I noticed Benson was looking at me and seemed a little tense. I smiled at him, gave him a thumbs up, and tried to ignore him. I wondered if it made him suspicious that I was dancing with Katie, but by then I didn't really care. When the dance was over, we went back to the table. I was just sitting down when I saw Greg Bartlett approaching us with a small bag in his hands. He took Kathy aside, whispered something to her, handed her the bag, and left. Kathy came back to the table holding the bag behind her back and leaned over to talk to me. "I need to go to the girls' room," she said. When I looked up at her, I saw something in her gaze that made me uncomfortable. "Don't do that," I said. "Don't do what?" I grabbed Katie's hand and held it, looking into her eyes. "You know what I'm talking about. You know I'm not stupid. I know what's going on here. Stop this now." "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "I just need to go to the girls' room." Katie pulled her hand away from me, and I watched her walk away. She didn't look back. While she was gone, I analyzed what I knew and what I understood from what I had seen. For me, the problem began the moment Kathy first called Mr. Hansen Jack. It bothered me, but the situation didn't escalate until Kathy's sudden bout of depression. Then she told me that the deal with National Pharmaceutical was in jeopardy, and that she would be blamed if it fell through, even though she had done nothing wrong. Then there were all those meetings with Bartlett and Hansen and the meeting with the customer. Katie didn't seem to keep track of her own and other people's menstrual cycles, and according to her calendar, this was a fertile night. I never could figure out why this happened, since Kathy was still on the pill. Then we had a fight about her shaving. Kathy never told me the truth about why she was going to do it, and I never told her about what I saw that night, standing on the porch. I watched her through the window as my world crumbled around me. Jack Hansen rose from his chair and kissed Katie's belly. I only heard a fraction of what was said before I went to the garage and opened the door. I didn't feel like walking into the house with her standing in front of another man. I couldn't deal with that, so as I opened the garage door, I alerted them that I was home and gave them time to stop what they were doing. Going upstairs to meet Kathy, I looked out the front door and saw Hansen, rat bastard that he is, running across the street to his car. I think Benson took one look at Katie and decided he needed her and made that clear to Hansen. She was the deciding factor. I didn't spend a lot of time trying to figure out why all this was happening. I just knew I had to stop it before it went too far. The fact that Bartlett and Hansen were up to their necks in all of this made me want to somehow mess up their plans and try to cheat them in the process. The last part of the whole thing was Katie's trip to the women's restroom. It was already 9:45, and Katie still hadn't returned to the table. I tensed up because there was less and less time left. I still didn't have a clear plan of action, so I got up and went to find Kathy, deciding that I would get her out of the building and take her home and deal with the consequences later. As I headed for the door, the band announced that they were on break and an idea popped into my head. I quickly looked around and noticed that Benson, Bartlett, and Hanson were now all standing together at the bar, so I had the audience I needed. I approached the band as they were stacking their instruments and turned to the lead singer. "Can you keep the mic hot?" I asked. "I want to make some announcements." "Sure, no problem," he replied, and held out his wireless mic to me. "It's already warmed up, just flick the switch on the side, and you'll be all set." "Thanks." I paced back and forth for a minute, trying to think of what I wanted to say, and then I took a deep breath and turned on the microphone. "May I have your attention, please?" I began. I saw many of the guests turn to look in my direction, but the room was still noisy. "May I have your attention, please?" I repeated. The noise began to die down, and there were only a few people left in the room talking. Looking around, I saw Kathy returning from the ladies' room. I then looked at the triumvirate of assholes, Benson, Bartlett, and Hanson. All three were looking at me with curious expressions on their faces. "Can I get everyone's attention?" There was silence in the room. Kathy stood in the doorway and looked at me. "Thank you. I want to take a few minutes to talk to all of you about this special event. First, I want to say that this is a wonderful party. Let's give a round of applause to those who threw this party for us." Almost everyone began to applaud, and Kathy began to slowly walk toward me. Her face reflected fear. "I've had a few drinks and I'm feeling pretty good right now, so I hope the words come out right. I wanted to talk to you to share some things that are going on with me and my wonderful wife, Kathy." I looked at Kathy and smiled at her, then turned to look at the three assholes standing at the bar. I couldn't tell what they were thinking, but they didn't look happy. "First, I want to share some good news with all of you. Katie and I are having a baby." Many of the guests began to applaud. Katie covered her face with her hands in what would look like mild embarrassment to those who didn't know what was really going on. Hanson looked angry, Bartlett looked confused, but I couldn't read Benson. "There's more good news. Kathy told me she's getting a promotion tonight because of her work on the National Pharmaceutical Company deal. I understand that Kathy, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Hanson, and Mr. Benson will meet upstairs tonight to sign the contract. Isn't that great?" Applause again. "Oh God, please stop," I heard Kathy say. She stopped 10 feet away from me and slowly lowered herself to the floor. Assholes number 1 and 2 were furious. Benson looked almost amused. "This evening started out so strangely, I thought I'd share it with you. Coming home from work in the evening, I found my lovely wife in the bathroom getting ready to shave." Laughter erupted in the crowd, but most sat in stunned silence. "We had a little argument about it. She said it was supposed to be a surprise for me, and I told her not to do it. I won that argument, or at least I thought I did. I realize now that she wasn't doing it for me, but on Jack's orders." At these words, there was a loud sigh. Katie was now lying on the floor crying, and most of the guests were looking at me as if they were watching a train wreck. There were only two assholes now. Benson seemed to have escaped. Hanson's face was bright red and he was shaking. Bartlett was walking toward me like he thought he could make me stop. Katie did it because she was supposed to be a gift from Mr. Benson tonight. Your company's management seems to think it's good business to encourage your employees to do that to potential clients in order to get a contract, even if it ruins the marriage. Bartlett was now standing right in front of me and trying to take the microphone away from me. I snatched the microphone from him and turned it off. "Listen, asshole, you try to snatch a mic from me again and I'll toss you like a bag of rocks. On second thought, though, I'll do it anyway." Bartlett stepped back from me and looked at Hanson. While they looked at each other, I turned the microphone back on. "One last thing, and this is for Bartlett and Hanson. I'm going to sue this company for what you did to my marriage, and I'm sure I'll be well compensated. Part of that compensation will be that you two assholes and everyone else involved in this mess will be fired. Good night, everyone, and have a nice vacation." There was dead silence in the room as I put the microphone away, walked over to Katie lying on the floor and squatted down next to her. "Katie." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Fred, I'm so Katie, don't say anything, I interrupted her. Do you think you'll get that promotion now? I stood up and looked around. People were looking at us, but when I looked back at them, they looked away. I cast one last glance at Katie and left the room. Picking up my coat, I was walking down the hallway toward the door when Hanson appeared in front of me. Do you have any idea what you've done? He asked. He asked. He asked. He asked. Yes, I replied. I entertained you before you and DC and H could finish entertaining my wife, and I hope I cost you millions. I'd hate to think we all went through that for a few $100,000. You'll pay for it, Hanson said. Actually, I think you're the one who's going to pay for it, I said. Along with the lawsuit, I'm going to go to the SEC. I think they might be interested in how this company does business. I turned to leave and Hanson grabbed my arm. Wait, I'm not done with you yet, he said. I brushed his hand away. You touch me again and you won't be able to walk when you walk out of here tonight, I said. I heard him mutter swear words behind my back as I walked away. When I got home, I immediately went to the liquor cabinet, pulled out a bottle of scotch, and began to slowly drink myself into unconsciousness. I think that's what caused my nightmares. I was on my second drink when I noticed something blue in one of the large pots on the kitchen floor. I got up to see what it was. It was a blue plastic case well hidden under the foliage of one of the plants. I knew what it was as soon as I picked it up, and when I opened it, my suspicions were confirmed. I remembered that something had fallen out of the bathroom wastebasket on Monday morning. I looked for it all over the kitchen, but it didn't occur to me to look in the flower pot. I walked back to the couch and placed the case on the coffee table next to the scotch tape. I filled my glass and took a big sip. Then, I picked up the case and opened it again. Looking at it, I thought, it's pretty damn full, not a single thing missing. I put the case back down and poured some more. I don't know how long I lasted, but at 9 o'clock Saturday morning, I woke up on the couch in the family room. The bottle of scotch was almost empty. My head was splitting, and my mouth tasted like shit. I stood up and felt dizzy for a minute. My stomach felt like it was rebelling against me. I started the coffee maker and headed for the shower. When I got upstairs, I noticed that Katie hadn't come home, and I didn't expect her to come back either because she was afraid to face me or because she was pissed that I'd messed things up at DC and H. I wasn't sure I cared. The shower helped. I felt a little better. After 2 cups of coffee, scrambled eggs, and toast, I sat down on the couch in the family room. I sat there trying to think through my next steps. My heart was breaking at the thought of how much I loved Kathy. I thought, how could she do this to us? I couldn't believe that her ambition was so strong that she would agree to do this to a client to win a deal. I doubted I could ever forgive her for all of this, but I knew I had to give her a chance to explain herself if she wanted to. I just couldn't leave without at least listening to what she had to say, but I didn't go after her demanding an explanation. I figured that if she didn't see fit to try to explain her actions to me, then I didn't need to know why. The reasons would only be important if she wanted a second chance with me. I couldn't think of what to do other than wait and see if Kathy would try to contact me. I wondered where she had spent the night, and then I remembered what she looked like when I left the party. I felt a little guilty for leaving her on the floor like that. I realized that I should have taken her home with me. I wasn't proud of myself, but I was hurt and angry and had no sympathy for Katie. The more I thought about it, the worse I felt, and the more I wondered where she lived. At 11 o'clock, I was still sitting on the couch when the phone rang. I assumed it was Kathy calling and wondered if I should answer it. I picked up on the 6th ring. Mr. Alpin? Yes. This is Special Agent Mark Walker with the FBI, said the voice in the receiver. Is your wife with you? My wife is not home, I said. I wondered why the FBI would want to talk to Kathy. No problem. You're the one I want to talk to, Agent Walker said. With me? I interjected. About what? I'd rather not discuss it over the phone, he said. Can you come to my office this afternoon? I think so, I said. Where are you located? Agent Walker gave me directions to his office, and I arranged to meet him there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. After the call, I tried to figure out what the FBI needed from me. The most I could figure out was that it must have something to do with one of the cases I had recently worked on. If that was the case, why couldn't he tell me what he needed over the phone? Over the years, I'd often had to talk to various law enforcement agencies on cases I'd worked on, and it never bothered me. But for some reason, this invitation to talk to the FBI made me a little wary. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I changed into jeans and a sweater and headed into town to meet Agent Walker. I left my car in the parking lot across from the high-rise office building in downtown Indianapolis, where the FBI offices were located. I took the elevator to the 7th floor and gave my name to the receptionist. "I'm here to see Special Agent Walker," I said. "Have a seat. I'll let him know you're here," she replied. I only had to wait 2 minutes before he followed me into the lobby. Unlike the expensive Armani suit he had been wearing the night before, Special Agent Walker was dressed in blue Dockers and a white Oxford shirt with no tie. "Mr. Alpin, thank you for coming," he said. "Please follow me." I followed him into the conference room, and as I sat down, Agent Walker offered me a cup of coffee, which I accepted. He poured 2 cups from a coffee maker on a table in the corner and held one out to me. He took a sip of the coffee and then sat down at the table across from me. "Should I call you Special Agent Walker or Mr. Benson?" I asked. "Why don't you try Mark?" he said. "And may I address you as Fred?" "Fred would be just fine." "You must be confused right now," Mark said. "Yes, but I think I'm beginning to understand what's going on," I said. "From what I understand, you were working undercover for Mr. Benson." "That's correct. I'm counting on your discretion to keep what I'm about to tell you here a secret," he said. "I think you probably know that I'm an investigator myself and understand what confidentiality means," I said. "I'm still not sure if you're friend or foe. I'm hoping you can explain to me how my wife got involved in this case. I'll tell you everything I can and answer any questions you have, as long as they don't jeopardize our investigation." "Okay, I'll listen to everything you have to say, but I have to say that I'm very angry that my wife was used the way she was." "This mess probably ended my marriage," I said. "It's probably not as bad as you think," Mark said. "Let me bring you up to speed and then you can ask your questions." "I don't mind," I said. "Earlier this year, the Security and Exchange Commission contacted the FBI," he began. "They received disturbing information about DC&H's business tactics from someone in the company and asked us to investigate the allegations. After reviewing the information we received from the SEC, we found enough evidence to investigate further. I can't give you the details of our investigation other than to say that it was decided to go undercover." Mark stood up and began to pace around the room. "During the course of our investigation, we learned that DC&H was trying to interest National Pharmaceutical in a merger. Mr. Benson talked to one of our agents and said he was concerned about DC&H's tactics. We then found out that no one from DC&H had met with Mr. Benson, so with his help, I took over and began negotiations with DC&H. I was able to convince Mr. Hansen and Mr. Bartlett that I was Mr. Benson, and I got them to believe that I was interested in their merger ideas and willing to sign a merger agreement with them. When they started drooling about the millions of dollars they thought they would make on this deal, I started acting reluctant. I told them I wanted to talk to other firms before I made a decision. The idea was to see what tactics they would use to get me to sign a deal with them." "So you asked my wife?" I asked. "Not exactly. On my first visits to the DC&H office, I was introduced to your wife when I was escorted into the conference room to meet with Bartlett and Hansen. I told Hansen that I would really like to talk to Mrs. Alpin. He replied, 'She's very attractive, isn't she?' I agreed with him, but that was not the reason I asked to see her." "Why did you want to see her?" I asked. I told Hansen that since she was head of the accounting department, I wanted to talk to her about the financial condition of the company I was supposedly planning to merge with. The real reason was that your wife was the insider who went to the SEC expressing concern about the way DC&H was doing business." "So Kathy knew you were working undercover for the FBI?" I asked. "No, she didn't know. I couldn't tell her," Mark replied. "The information she sent to the SEC indicated that people higher up than Bartlett and Hansen were involved in the company's problems. She blamed the president of the company and the CEO. I didn't know if I could trust her given that my assignment was to investigate Bartlett and Hansen. I couldn't be sure she wouldn't blow my cover to protect them." "So Katie snitched on the company executives. I didn't know what that meant for me. If she didn't know Benson was a fake, was she really going to do that to him at the party?" I had questions I wanted to ask Mark, but I decided to wait until he was done to see if I would get answers from what he told me. Like I said, I made it clear to Hansen that I could back out of the deal, and he asked me what it would take to get me to sign with DC&H. I asked him what he could offer. Then Hansen said, I noticed that you think Kathy Alpin is very beautiful. How would you look at getting her part? I was surprised. I expected him to offer me a bribe. I had to see where it would lead, so I told him I might be interested, but I wouldn't make any commitments. That might be hard for you to hear, but it's important to the story. There's nothing you can say that would upset me more than what I've already experienced, I said. All right then. I waited a few days and then I met with Hanson again. He asked me if I had thought about his offer. I asked him if he meant that he would arrange it so that I could do it with your wife, and he answered in the affirmative. Not wanting to sound too concerned, I said I was definitely interested, but still not sure she was worth it. Hanson assured me that she was worth it. I still didn't understand how Hanson could promise to honor his offer, so I asked him how he could get a married woman to agree to give herself to me as payment for signing the contract. Let me worry about that. If you want her, she's yours. That's all Hanson said. That son of a bitch, I said. Who the hell does he think he is? He's just a nasty bastard. I got the feeling he wanted me to take his offer for more than just to get me to sign the contract. I let him wait a little while and then asked him when he could arrange for me to meet your wife. He immediately said we'd do it during the company Christmas party on the 20th. So you were going to go for it? I said. You were only going to do it with my wife to further your undercover investigation. No. I had no intention of doing it with your wife, Mark said. First, it would have been unethical on my part. And second, I was sure that the room where I was to meet your wife had hidden cameras and microphones to record what was going on. It had to be more than just a favor to get me to sign a contract. It was also supposed to give them material that could be used for my blackmailing. How did you plan to get out of it? I asked. I planned to back out at the last minute and say the circumstances weren't right. Then I was going to say I was willing to make a deal, but Mrs. Alpin would have to join me in the hotel room after the party. Then, when she was alone, I was to identify myself and bring her here for questioning. We had planned to arrest Bartlett and Hanson today. We thought we'd have enough evidence to charge them both by morning. You approached me last night, introduced yourself, and said you were from security. The thing is, I knew who you were and I was afraid you knew what was going on and were involved. I wasn't sure which side you were on until you stood up and gave your speech. Oh shit, I said. I hope I didn't screw up your investigation, but I couldn't just stand by and let my wife give herself to another man as part of a business transaction. I understand, Mark said, and you didn't do anything wrong. You actually saved me from a meeting with them that was supposed to take place at 10 o'clock last night. I managed to get away with my cover intact and talk to Hanson again this morning. He made me a large cash offer that I was supposed to sign today. I told him I would meet him at his office Monday morning, and when he handed me the money, we would arrest him and shut down DC&H's operations while we did an in-depth investigation of all the deals they had been involved in over the last 3 years. I still don't understand Kathy's place in all of this, I said. Your wife was trying to do the right thing by snitching on the company, he said. As for her involvement in the offer made to me, I suspect she was coerced by Hanson. He may have sent her blackmail in some way. Now I knew I had to find Kathy. Now I wanted to hear her version of events. She wasn't completely innocent in this story, but there were extenuating circumstances. That's really all I can tell you right now, Mark said. Do you have any more questions? Not at the moment, no. Good. Once again, I remind you that you are not to discuss this investigation with anyone. I would ask you not to say anything to your wife just yet. Wait until Bartlett and Hanson are indicted, and only then tell her that this was all an undercover FBI operation. That'll happen in a couple days. Then we'll still want to talk to her. I agreed not to say anything about the investigation, and then Mark said he would call me and let me know when I could tell Kathy about the FBI operation, and then said they would probably want to question me to get my side of the story. We shook hands and I left the building. When I got home, a message came in from Kathy asking me to call her. I called the number she had left and a woman picked up. I asked to be put through to Kathy. Who do I think is calling? The voice asked. Tell her it's her husband, I said. Kathy's voice sounded nervous as she picked up the phone. Where have you been? She asked. I've been calling all day. Not all day, I said. I was home until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh, I guess that's when I started calling you. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. She had to show me that she was willing to tell me what was going on. So I continued to remain silent. Fred, can I come home? She said. You live here, don't you? I said. You should be here now. I'll be home in an hour. Okay, I said and hung up. I looked at the clock. It was already 5 o'clock. I decided to make dinner for her arrival, and after dinner, we could talk. I made dinner and then went upstairs to prepare for what I felt was going to be the outcome of our conversation. Back downstairs, I took the blue case from the coffee table in the family room and put it in my pocket. I made spaghetti and meatballs and a salad, then opened a bottle of Chianti. Kathy walked in the door at 6:05 and dinner was ready. When she saw dinner on the table and the open bottle of wine, I realized the tension had left her face. She realized it wasn't as bad as she thought it was. We didn't speak at first. We walked over and sat at the table. I poured the wine and we began to eat. After a few minutes of heavy silence, I asked Kathy where she had spent the night. Did any of my friends drive me home after you left? I couldn't resist teasing her. Oh, you didn't stay until the end of the party, I said. You practically ended the party with your speech, she said. I guess I owe some people an apology for that, but not to you, and certainly not to Bartlett or Hanson. I think you're right. I owe you an apology, she said. She was about to say something else, but I stopped her, saying we'd talk after dinner. And we both fell silent again. There was nothing more for the two of us to talk about. After dinner, Kathy started to put the dishes in the dishwasher, but I stopped her. You can clean up the kitchen later, but right now we need to talk, I said. We walked to the family room and sat down facing each other. Do you want to just tell me everything, or should I start asking questions? Either way, I only expect the truth, I said. I'll tell you everything, she said. I'm sure you know when it all started. It was the day after your Christmas party. Jack called me and told me that a huge deal they were working on with National Pharmaceutical was in danger of falling through. Jack told me that Mr. Benson had told them that he would only sign the contract if I agreed with him. I couldn't believe he could ask me to do something like that and got angry. But he told me that this deal was very important to the company, and if I agreed and did what they were asking, I would get a big reward. He talked about a lot of money and a promotion. I didn't want to do it, but Jack kept pushing me and told me that a lot of people were depending on me. I told them I needed to think about it. They made me so confused and worried that I couldn't think straight. When you came home and I looked at you, I realized I couldn't do that to you. On Monday, Jack and Mr. Bartlett hounded me all day trying to get me to agree. Mr. Hanson said that if the deal fell through, it would be my fault and they would have to let me go. They also said that if I told anyone what was going on, I would be fired. I tried to tell you as much as I could. I knew that if you knew the whole story, you would do something crazy and I would lose my job. On Tuesday, I told them I wouldn't do it, and they asked me to think again. Then Mr. Hanson told me that the company was over $100,000 short and that if there was an audit, it would look like I had been embezzling money from the company for the last few years. Jack told me that I would end up going to jail. He said if I did everything he asked, I would get the promised money and a promotion. But if I didn't cooperate, there would be an audit and I would be charged with embezzlement. In the end, I had to agree to do what he wanted. Jack and Mr. Bartlett talked to me every day to make sure I wouldn't let them down. They kept telling me I was doing the right thing and tried to convince me that you would understand if you knew how important this deal was. Up until this point, I had been listening passively, but now I was starting to get angry. You can't believe I can think what you're doing is right, I said. You should have told me everything. I would have found a way out for you. I know, Katie said. When I decided to go through with it, I felt a little better, but I felt so guilty about what I was doing to you. You have to understand that I was terribly afraid of going to jail. I had to take the risk. The problem was that you came home earlier than expected. When I got back to the party, I saw you with a microphone trying to get everyone's attention. I was so scared. I had no idea what you were up to and I didn't know if I could stop you. I couldn't believe you said I was pregnant. I didn't say you were pregnant, I said. I said we were having a baby. You weren't pregnant yet, but that was our plan, wasn't it? Well, yes, but what? Are we or aren't we going to start a family? I asked. Yes, we are going to. I'm going to stop taking birth control pills tomorrow and then we can start. I was so stressed out by the whole situation that I wasn't thinking straight. Anyway, you gave your speech and basically ended my career at DC&H and probably ruined the deal with National Pharmaceutical. So basically what you're saying is that Bartlett and Hanson got you and Benson to make a business deal. But I blew it by catching you. After all, The only reason you didn't entertain Benson is because I blew it with my little speech. So have you summed it up? Yes, but I don't blame you for what you did. I understand why you did what you did, she said. Oh, good. Then you forgive me for trying to keep my wife from having fun with another man, I said wryly. That's not what I meant. I know you had every right to react the way you did, and I have no right to be upset with you. I'm upset at myself. I should have told you everything from the beginning. Do you think you can ever forgive me? Kathy asked. It depends, I said. Really? You told me everything I needed to know about what was going on? I asked. Yes, I told you everything. I love you, and I can't bear the thought of losing you over this mess I've gotten myself into, said Katie. Well, it doesn't look as bad as it did at first, I said, and saw a smile reappear on Kathy's face. I just need to answer a couple questions, and then we can put this behind us. Okay, what kind of questions? I felt the joy return to her voice. I pulled a blue case out of my pocket and tossed it on the coffee table. I found it in the trash the other day, and it's full. You threw away all your birth control pills last week, but not only did you not tell me about it, you tried to make me believe you were still taking them. Just 5 minutes ago, you said you'd stop taking them tomorrow. Can you explain that to me? Katie was shocked, and that was putting it mildly. Her mouth opened several times, but no words came out. And when she finally spoke, I was sure she was lying. You're right, I stopped taking the pill, she said. I was planning to get you pregnant and then surprise you. I know how much you wanted to start a family, so I thought it would be a nice surprise when I told you about it. This plan will only work if you and I make love, but the last time we made love was the day before you stopped taking the pill. I was just so upset about what Mr. Bartlett and Jack wanted from me that I wasn't in the mood to do it at that point, Katie replied. Did you know that last night was the most fertile night of your cycle? I asked. It was another question that stunned her. No, I didn't know that. I had too many other worries to think about it, she stated. I just find it odd that you planned to do this with Benson last night, which fell in the middle of your menstrual cycle, I said. What are you saying? She asked. That I'm willing to risk getting pregnant? I would never do that, she said. I could see that Katie was very upset. I was getting tired of playing with her, so I decided to end the game. One more question, Kathy, I began. How long have you been having fun with that rat bastard Hanson? What? Was all she could say. No more lies. I know you've been keeping track of your menstrual cycle and marked last night as a day in your day planner. He wanted you to get pregnant, didn't he? I looked at Katie. She had started to cry and made no attempt to answer me. I saw you standing in the living room. I saw Hanson kissing your belly, the way a man often kisses the belly of the woman who is carrying his child, or, in this case, will be carrying it. Did you really think I would be stupid enough to let you have his baby and make me think it was mine? Or were you planning to leave me all along? You spent last night with him, didn't you? Katie sobbed loudly as I got up and left the room. When I returned to the kitchen with my suitcase, Kathy looked up at me. When she saw what I was doing, she jumped up from her chair and rushed over to me. Please don't leave me. I love you. I don't love Jack. I told you he sent me through the blackmail. I had no choice but to do what he asked. Why didn't you just keep taking birth control pills and lie to Jack about it? You had no problem lying to me. I guess I'd have to believe what you told that rat bastard more than anything you've told me lately, I said. I forgot to tell you that last night when I was watching you and that asshole. I heard you tell him I love you. So where does that leave me? I don't love him. If I get pregnant, I'll have an abortion. I love you. Please, you have to believe me, she pleaded. No, I don't believe you. As for the baby, don't have an abortion because of me. Katie collapsed to the floor and burst into tears. When I looked back from the garage door, she looked the same as when I had left her at the party the night before. I no longer felt love for her, only disgust. I hated to leave the house we had worked so hard to build, but it didn't bring back any fond memories. Fortunately, we hadn't lived in it long enough for those memories to arise. Epilogue. It had been over 2 years since I had broken up with Kathy. When I left her, I found a furnished apartment and tried to start my life over. That's when the nightmares started. I was no longer satisfied with what I was doing, so I quit my job and headed to California. After finding a place to live, I started my own insurance investigation company. I called Bill Ripley and asked if he wanted to be my partner, and 2 months later he joined me. When he came out, he told me that when Mary Farrell found out we were starting our own company, she asked if we had any work for her. Mary moved here 14 months ago, And 2 months later, we started dating. 3 months later, we started living together. I was surprised that I fell in love again so quickly. I was in no hurry to remarry, but I like having someone I care about to share my life with. I was able to keep the memory of my loved ones in Indianapolis alive, thanks to a few acquaintances I still keep in touch with, including Special Agent Mark Walker. It turned out that Kathy had made inquiries about the president and CEO of the company at the behest of Jack Hansen. Hansen hoped to get them in trouble for questionable deals they were involved in and get the board of directors to fire them. Hansen envisioned that he would become president of DC&H afterward. Obviously, Katie wasn't lying when she said she didn't love him. She was toying with him because he was in love with her, and she knew that if he got his way, she would get everything she wanted. Hansen and his wife had no children, which he blamed on his wife. After I left, he tried for over a month to get Kathy pregnant, but it didn't work out with her either. It turned out he was infertile. His wife found out about his affair with Kathy and divorced him. A month later, he was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for his actions at DC, and H.M. Bartlett also received prison time. He will spend 2 years in a minimum security federal prison. Kathy was fired from DC&H. Then, the company was reorganized, and shortly thereafter it was bought out by a larger consulting firm. From what I hear, Kathy teaches accounting at a community college near Columbus, Ohio. I try not to think about Kathy. The wounds are still too fresh for me to reminisce about the good times we had. I don't miss her, and that's a good thing. Mary more than fills the hole that Kathy left in my life, and that's why I married her. And now I'm sitting here looking at her and wondering if I should wake her up. Not to tell her I was dreaming again, but to tell her that I love her. Mary told me last night that when I decide I want a baby, all I have to do is ask. But be sure to place your order early because labor will have to wait 9 months, Mary added. I'm thinking of placing the order as early as tomorrow. By the way, if you were wondering about DC&H, you weren't wrong to think of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. But that's not the end of the story. I have an idea to write a story from Kathy's point of view. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear the story from Kathy's side, then leave a comment and don't forget to give this video a like and of course, subscribe to my channel.